Well, this morning our time and evening your time, I am thrilled to be joined by David Moore, the CEO of Pragmatic Semiconductor. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Great to be here with you.
Absolutely. Well, you've had an illustrious career spanning a quarter of a century within this industry, and you've been at some of the industry stalwarts like Intel, Micron, and now Pragmatic Semiconductor. If you look back on the first portion of your career, what what drew you to the semiconductor industry to begin with?
Yeah, I think, probably quite a few things. Certainly the level of innovation. So obviously I was from an engineering background, did my undergrad in Dublin in Ireland, did my grad school in the US, in Atlanta at Georgia Tech. And through those years, really, I think just drew a foundational amazement with semiconductors. And that was back in the late 90s when they're not even what they are today, right? But I think that level of innovation and pace, and even early signs then of what they were enabling in the world, I think today it's even clearer still how foundational semiconductors are to almost everything we do in life. But back then, certainly the opportunity to innovate and work in something fast paced that was really changing the world was very exciting for me.
Well, and then right out of there, you right out of Georgia Tech, you were involved with some of the most innovative companies. After being at companies like Intel and Micron, some of the largest enterprise companies within our industries, how have those experiences shaped your approach to running a scale up like Pragmatic?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I've just been really fortunate in my career to have just some amazing opportunities. A lot of my time obviously was in Silicon Valley. So, almost 25 years there. Five of those, though, in Southeast Asia. I spent a number of years in Malaysia, setting up large IP engineering groups. I set up a subsidiary for Altera in Vietnam. So, spent over a year there in Vietnam. So fortunate to have had just a diverse range of experiences from a leadership perspective in engineering, and then later at the business level. Altera was acquired by Intel in late 2015. It was a very large acquisition at the time. And certainly there was a significant opportunity, I think, for uh, FPGAs, which Altera was doing at the time and still does today, to play a role in Intel's success. But clearly, for the Altera management being acquired too, was an opportunity to really get in and learn from one of the iconic companies in the industry. Not without its challenges, obviously, in that time frame and since. But for me, I always look back extremely with gratitude, just in terms of the learning opportunity to work alongside some of the very best in the industry. I ended up running the FPGA and structured ASIC business worldwide at Intel. And that was an extremely fulfilling role, as you can expect after starting there as an engineer out of grad school. Micron was a very different role, right? Chief strategy officer, but again, Micron, such a massive company in the semiconductor industry, obviously a global leader in memory and storage, 45,000 people, I think, worldwide, 30 billion in revenue in the good years and growing. And so that was an opportunity to again work at a large scale company that was at the time looking at some very strategic bets in terms of capital, capex, capacity. Obviously, a lot of work at that time in terms of looking at the Chips Act and how to basically leverage that for investment in domestic source supply in the U.S. And so those experiences were just I'm very grateful for them. When I was looking at next roles, I was lining up with a couple of CEO roles in the Bay Area, and this opportunity for Pragmatic just came up very much out of left field. A very unique, disruptive opportunity that I'm definitely glad to share more about in terms of the company, its technology, and its business model. But for me personally, at the time, I think it was an opportunity really to look differently at semiconductors. How do we kind of bring through new disruptive technologies to broaden the opportunity for semiconductors, but also too to address some of the inherent challenges, let's say, that the industry has in new ways. And that for me was really exciting to be able to apply the knowledge I was fortunate enough to accumulate at large scale companies and bring that through into a scale up that was right at the juncture for kind of taking a decade plus of innovation and technology proof points into scaling up commercially.
Well, what a great segue and opportunity to tell our audience a little bit more about Pragmatic, because as you alluded to, you could have rode off in the sunset at Micron, or you had your pick of a couple of CEO roles. What led you to choose Pragmatic?
Well, I think first and foremost, the disruptive opportunity that the technology brings. So I'll talk a little bit maybe about that. Pragmatic's a world leader in flexible IC technology. So we develop and manufacture ultra thin, flexible, cost optimized, ultra low carbon footprint semiconductor technology. And this allows us to embed that seamlessly to provide item level intelligence in virtually any object on the planet. And so, what we do is we bring together thin film technology, which has been around for quite some time in the display industry and other places. We bring that together for the first time ever with 300 millimeter, 12-inch wafer fabrication processing. And so, this here is actually one of our wafers. I can do a little show and tell. See that? This is one of our 12-inch wafers. On one of these wafers, you could have 50,000 individual FlexICs. This one has about 10,000 of our NFC product. And you can see it's ultra thin and flexible. But also, too, we go from raw materials to wafers out in our fabs in just days versus many months for semiconductors. We use a fraction of the energy and the water and the chemicals, which makes them an order of magnitude lower carbon footprint. And then last but not least, our model of fabrication is extremely compact and efficient. These fabs that we're building are just 20 meters by 30 meters, so 600 square meters, but capable of producing billions of Flex ICs per year.
Now I can see why you joined. Now, Pragmatic has very quickly become the UK's largest semiconductor manufacturer by wafer volume. Congrats on that. And now you get the challenge of being able to balance that rapid growth with keeping an eye and a focus on the quality, sustainability, and innovation that you just described. How do you do that?
Yeah, well, I think, so after I joined, we were right in the kind of kicking off our Series D raise. So the company raised $230 million at the end of 2023. That was the largest ever venture capital raise for Europe for a semiconductor company. So very fulfilling to have achieved that. And with that funding, we've been, basically investing in our capacity. So scaling up our Flex IC fabs here in the northeast of the UK, where we're building the first ever 300 millimeter fabs in the UK, the first ever Flex IC 300 millimeter fabs anywhere in the world. And so that's been a big focus for us in terms of ramping the capacity. On the technology advancement, there's a whole host of exciting applications that hopefully I can talk you through a little bit today for the technology, but there's obviously too a lot of opportunity in terms of advancing the roadmap, continually reducing the power, increasing the density, bringing in new capabilities that open up the roadmap for us and the market that we address. But of course, you don't get great things done without great people. And so a big focus there has been to strengthen and grow the team. We've grown to a little over 350 people today. And essentially complementing the amazing talent we had. So our co-founder and CTO, Richard Price, still our CTO with the company 15 years. He's forgotten more about thin film materials than at lunchtime than I'd learn in a lifetime. But bringing bringing through other industry leading talent to complement all that deep, unique expertise was a big focus as well. And so we've brought in some great executives too from the broader industry to help complement all that incredible innovation and very unique capabilities that we have internally. And so it's really been about growing us and scaling us and maturing our business processes from business management to kind of our end-to-end program management all the way through, of course, making sure that we kind of set ourselves up to deliver at the quality and the reliability that it takes to do high volume manufacturing. So that's the usual stuff you'd expect: yields, reliability, making sure that we're really clear with our customers in terms of their requirements. I think that was part of the big shift really for the company, but making sure too that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they'd say in my home country, and making sure that we maintain all of the innovation and the special elements of the culture that the company has while we mature it for scale.
You alluded to this a little bit with the CHIPS Act comment earlier. Europe's investing heavily in semiconductor sovereignty. How do you see Pragmatic positioning itself as both a local leader and a global competitor simultaneously?
Yeah, so I mean, our customer demand is very much global, right? And so we definitely have to have a global mindset. Our plan in the near term is to service that demand from our fabs in the Northeast. But the fact that our fabs are so compact and inherently more localizable than, maybe a large silicon fab, as you know, there's only a certain number of places it's going to make sense to build a semiconductor silicon fab, whereas ours, because of they're more capital efficient, space efficient, they need less resources. That means that they're inherently more flexible in terms of where we can locate that capacity. So, obviously, semiconductors will never be more strategic, right? There's continued efforts to look at how do we diversify the semiconductor supply chain. How do we diversify, in particular, the semiconductor manufacturing footprint, right? 70% of manufacturing of semis is still just across the three countries: China, Taiwan, and Korea. And so there's a significant demand there for being able to bring through domestic sources of supply. And because we can go from groundbreaking on a clean room to production in just 12 to 14 months, because we can do that quickly and more capital efficiently, that means there's a lot of opportunities for us to co-locate potentially our manufacturing with customers, be they strategic customers, commercial oriented customers who love the idea of having that improved security of access to supply, but also the inherent just benefits of being able to localize that. And of course, with all the uncertainty and volatility in the tariff space as well, that's become particularly important, right?
So I've got to assume then, because of the smaller scale too, that the construction timelines to build one of your fabs would be significantly shrunk. Is that correct? And does that also provide another advantage?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, it depends on the technology and where you're building fab, but a silicon fab typically would take 3 to 5 years. We're able to go in basically from clean room, kind of break ground foundations at our Pragmatic Park site, where we're building out our production lines. We can go from breaking ground on foundations to production in as little as 12 to 14 months. We'll continue to hone that. So we're really just limited by tool lead time, right? So if we could get lead time on tools down, then we could basically move potentially even faster as we continue to mature as a company. So it is a very disruptive value in terms of being able to be kind of adaptive, right? We all know the semiconductor industry is very cyclical in terms of supply and demand. So having a path to be able to efficiently and adaptively match your supply to your demand. Obviously, right now where we are, our demand far outstrips what we're supplying to, and so we're ramping our capacity to meet that. But in time, I think it'll provide some very unique elements of being able to quickly deploy capacity where it's needed, and against the applications maybe locally where that capacity is required.
If you could figure out that lead time on tools, let the whole industry know. So
Right, absolutely.
uh, your fab as a service model is just unique. I've never heard of anything like it. How do you see it changing the way companies access semiconductor manufacturing, and what advantage does it bring to your customer?
Yeah, I think it'll depend a little on the customer, but essentially it goes back to the idea that a lot of customers would love better visibility and control over their supply chains. Right? We saw in the last few years, COVID, in terms of some of the supply chain constraints, just how brittle those supply chains are, and so the opportunity to be able to co-localize your capacity for your particular products, have the security of that supply chain, the security of access to it, I think is very exciting. And fab as a service is just kind of a step beyond that, where ultimately, we don't expect our customers to be expert in our thin film semiconductor manufacturing. So we deploy that capacity and have the opportunity to manage that essentially as a service, take advantage of our networked fabs and all of the data in terms of the process improvements, but then offer a localized, dedicated capacity for customers as they grow in terms of their overall demand. So today we're focused on building up our capacity kind of at our Northeast fabs here in the UK. But in time, we definitely see a ton of customer interest as they start to ramp up their overall demand and supply needs. The opportunity to co-locate obviously cuts down on transit times, provides better security and visibility in terms of access to the fab and allocations. But I think critically too, it provides basically some synergies in terms of integrating the wafers that come out of our fab and those short cycle times with their downstream manufacturing and product integration. And so there's a number of examples where we could see that being very exciting for us.
Well, absolutely, and you've alluded to the fact that the semiconductor markets, the amount of verticals that are served are almost innumerable. Are there specific markets that have driven a lot of your explosive growth?
Yeah, I think we're largely focused in the near term on servicing the consumer, industrial, and healthcare segments. That's not to say we don't have opportunities beyond that, and certainly in time in areas like automotive and others. But we really feel like our sweet spot for the technologies in some of those consumer, industrial, healthcare applications. Near term for us, very focused on enabling radio frequency identification at scale. Basically near field communication where you're interacting with one of our chips integrated in, say, a smart label. You're tapping your phone to authenticate that product, to understand basically where it's been in the supply chain, and then broadening into the logistics flows of track and trace across global supply chains too. It's a huge opportunity there in kind of opportunities to extend consumer engagement, but also significant visibility for logistics at scale. Other opportunities you can imagine on the consumer electronics side, we've got something that's really thin and flexible. It can integrate into things. Let me get my glasses here. You can picture AR VR glasses where you've got a bendable hinge, you've got a constrained space to integrate electronics, wearables like this ring I'm wearing, where you want to be able to take advantage of that form factor, right? And be able to integrate electronics seamlessly in ways that you just can't do with silicon chips today. So those present great opportunities for us too. And then on the healthcare side, smart monitoring, you can picture something so flexible, can integrate really well into smart health monitors, but beyond that into diagnostics and a whole range of areas where we have opportunities. So I'd say there are some of the main near-term opportunities for the technology. Anywhere where we can provide item level intelligence at scale, really enabling some of that physical AI transformation, right? Providing you're not gonna find us in a GPU in a data center anytime soon, but you will find us basically providing that identity, that localization, that sensing within the environment that pipes all that data back from not just tens of millions of objects, but hundreds of billions and even trillions of objects in the IoT AI applications of the future.
Can you tell us about a specific customer success that has just left you feeling energized and excited?
I think very broadly, we're our focus on the near term radio frequency identification market. We're partnering with some of the leading players in that space. And I think there's a significant opportunity. Our vision is to, empower our customers' innovation and bridge those physical and digital worlds, but really do it for a more sustainable future. So what really energizes us really in terms of that vision is not just the opportunity to drive a thriving, growing business, but also too, if you look at some of the applications we can bring the technology to, for example, reducing waste in the supply chain is a very straightforward one, and making packaging smarter, where there's more, greatly reduced waste, more, reuse and recycling of items across the supply chain. Think of food. About 30% of all food is wasted every year, and food production and transportation and storage. These are major needle movers in terms of greenhouse gases and emissions. So I really feel like our opportunity to bring a more sustainable future is through the fact that we're much more sustainable as a chip. We have less carbon footprint. But I think what really inspires us is some of those opportunities where we can really kind of improve people's lives and the planet in the process. And I think that's what really kind of inspires us as a company in terms of our vision.
Well, you mentioned something earlier that I want to hover back over, and you talked about people, and the growth of a company is dependent upon the growth of people. And as you've grown rapidly in the UK and Europe, what strategies have you found to be the most effective in attracting top engineering talent in a highly competitive global market?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I think so we're headquartered in Cambridge, and so Cambridge for those of your viewers and your audience who aren't as familiar with it, it's really it's a world class innovation hub, right? In terms of the startups it generates, the number of unicorns per capita, whichever way you want to mention innovation intensity, Cambridge is fantastic. So we've been fortunate in being able to be headquartered here. We get to be able to attract people to Cambridge. It's got a great ecosystem. There's some major multinationals like Microsoft and others are here as well. And so we've got significant opportunity to be able to compete for talent locally. In the Northeast, where we're doing our manufacturing, as you well know, a big challenge for the semiconductor industry is how do we look at, really reinvigorating the talent pipeline in manufacturing, process development, device physics, these kinds of areas. So we're partnering closely with, universities. There's a fantastic university system here in the UK. We also have a great catchment of, industry talent from over the years in the Northeast, in the semiconductor industry. But I would say too, beyond kind of developing the pipeline, partnering with the government and academia here locally, clearly, there's no company in the semiconductor industry that doesn't have to take a somewhat global lens when it comes to talent. And so we look at expanding where we need to internationally. We're doing that right now commercially, staffing up our US and Asia Pacific sales teams and customer success support teams. Ultimately, a big piece of it too is attracting people to here to the UK on visas, and so that's an important element in terms of building it. So it really comes across a range of kind of vectors, attracting talent internationally, looking at the right points in time to scale out our international footprint, building the right talent pipelines locally, and then building on what is a great kind of install base of talent here in the UK as well.
If somebody were unfamiliar with Pragmatic's culture, what's one or maybe two things that are unique to Pragmatic, to the culture that you're most proud of that you would want others to know about?
Well, I think there's probably a couple of elements I'd flag. The one I wouldn't say is unique to Pragmatic, but I think innovation is very much at our core. And as you'd expect, when you're bringing a disruptive technology like this to market, it builds on many, many years of innovation, facing technical challenges and being able to find the right way through them. And that continues to be a key part of our success. I think moving quickly, the fact that we can go from raw materials to wafers out in just days means we've got an agility, and so making sure that we're moving quickly with our customers, finding ways to support them, having them think differently about how they integrate the technology, being on the front foot there. And then I think third I'd highlight is a unity of purpose. I've worked in great companies, but it's not always easy to have everybody just rowing in the same direction. And thankfully at Pragmatic, it's a culture I inherited, but it's very much still alive today, which is that basically people understand and are really inspired by our vision, and they all row in the same direction to get it done. We're all clear on the job to be done, and from the leadership team down to every operator and technician in the company, I think we believe in the opportunity ahead. That unity of purpose is really special when you have it.
Well, I agree. And I think part of what I have been drawn to about Pragmatic is a huge portion of that purpose is responsible development of technology in order to save our planet. So, as a father of five children, I want them to have a planet to live on. So, thank you for that purpose.
It's not just lip service. It's a huge part of not just who we are, but it's also a huge part of the value we deliver to customers. Right? As you well know, in the semiconductor industry, it's not easy to move the needle on carbon footprint, right? And there's a lot of good work being done in the industry to kind of improve that. But being able to bring a technology through from the ground up that's inherently more sustainable, lower carbon footprint, makes a big difference. And that kind of advantage that we can bring to customers is really important to them, as it is to your kids too.
Well, and as we start winding down here,
Yeah.
a lot of times these discussions can sound like a highlight reel of achievements and successes, but you and I both know that as executives in the industry, it's not all a linear trajectory up. Is there a time where, or an event that you can point to, particular failure or setback that, upon hindsight, you think has been fundamental in shaping Pragmatic?
Well, I think over the years, even prior to my joining, there was many, many of those pivotal moments where there seemed to be challenges that were unsurpassable, and the company found a way to innovate. And I've, under my watch, seen that happen countless times. I think one of the main things I would say is as you're going from innovation and proof points, and you're moving then to sampling with customers, and then you're moving to actually production and shipping in volume, the elements of quality and reliability become inherently more important, and you've got to build muscle to that. And I'm glad that we were able to build a lot of those processes internally as we were ramping our fab. So even as we drove to yield, we were understanding kind of where our product was from a quality reliability standpoint, and making sure that we had the right, maturation of our processes and our technology to be able to get ahead of that. And so making sure that basically we were catching the issues in our product as we evolve the technology and ramp it, and not having our customers find it. So I think in looking back, that sometimes feels like a setback, but it actually, for your customers and your long-term health of your business, it's critically important phase of the journey.
Presenting with a unique opportunity, you obviously can't at this point talk to every person who interviews there. But if you were to talk to, whether it be an engineer, a business leader, an operator, and they were somebody who, as you know, the best in our industry typically don't ever have to look because they're well taken care of. But if they are open minded and they are curious about Pragmatic, and you had a chance to give them an elevator pitch on why they should join, what would that be?
I think first and foremost, it would start with the opportunity to do something different, right? And disrupt the industry in multiple ways and bring through novel, new, sustainable technology in a way that's never been done before. And that in itself is exciting. I know for engineers, the opportunity to not just innovate, but to be able to drive that innovation for so much broader benefit in the world, I think is just a great opportunity that we're all grateful for and would be exciting for anybody. I think there's an element too of, you know, basically the roadmap and the runway we have. There's so much room we have to continue to innovate and bring through new capabilities. I think that's extremely exciting too. Not to say for a second that other areas of the semi industry are at a dead end, right? We continue to innovate, we continue to bring AI through in all kinds of novel ways. But I feel like here at Pragmatic, you'd be part of something that's still kind of pushing the boundaries in different ways and in disruptive ways that isn't being done anywhere else in the industry. And that's just exciting.
Final question here. What would you like for your and Pragmatic's legacy to be? If you're to fast forward 10 years from now and look back, what would you like the legacy of the company and your legacy at the company to be?
Well, I think it very much comes back to our vision, right, where we are kind of empowering our customers' innovation. So I think our legacy would certainly um, be so important to be able to look and say that we help bridge the physical and digital worlds, but we did it for a more sustainable future. So I think seeing our technology come through in ways that really have those needle moving, kind of improvements to people's lives on the planet, where it's more accessible, affordable healthcare, whether it's more secure supply chains, whether it's better reuse and recycling and circular economy initiatives. I think these are all going to become incredibly important in the generations and years ahead. And so being able to have really kind of moved the needle in that respect, at the same time doing it in a way that was itself inherently more sustainable. Obviously, I am keen to build a long and lasting and thriving business here, but I think we all like to be able to wake up every day and say we're hopefully making the world a bit of a better place as we do it. And in pragmatic sense, I think that that's very much our opportunity and what I hope our legacy will be too.
Well, the final thing that I would share with our audience would be, if it's an engineer that's curious about Pragmatic and possibly joining, or an investor that was interested in what you're doing, how would you ask them to get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me very easily on LinkedIn. That's probably the way most people do reach out to me, and I answer almost every reach out I get. So that's obviously one way. Obviously, our website is also another way to learn more about the company. Obviously, we've done a lot of work in terms of really honing and focusing our brand and our engagement. That's a great way to learn more about the company. But you can find me individually. Let's say LinkedIn is probably the easiest way.
Well, I couldn't be more thankful for your time, and I know our audience will be grateful for the insights that you shared about what our industry is doing. And thank you for the responsible development of technology at Pragmatic. And hopefully, we can do this again very soon.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Thank you.